Hello, everybody. This is the first episode of our podcast for the Skeptical Believers. You can also find us on Facebook under Baggin. That is Bay Area Ghost Investigation Network. That's what that stands for, so you can go to that. I'll have it up on the screen too, so you can see what it actually looks like. But today, so I'm Lisa, and I have Leanne with me. We are two of the founding members of the group. And Leanne has abilities which are sometimes pretty amazing. It depends on how you look at it. So what were some of the first things that have happened to you, first paranormal things that have happened to you?
Hi, everybody. Well, all my life I've had experiences with spirits. They approach me. I've had to shut it off. But one of my first experiences, I was, maybe 5 years old or so, and I was with some relatives and my aunt and her sisters, and they had this big farm. There's a mini bike going by right now. They had a big farm, and they were planting flowers. And back in the day, you could plant flowers, take them to market, and that's kind of how they supported themselves. And there was a big barn, typical big red barn, and there was a man standing outside, overalls, plaid shirt, typical farming-looking guy, and he was just watching. And I remember asking who it was, and they were like looking around. There's nobody here, and it went on for a little while. He was watching, and I would look, and then they were getting upset with me, saying that I was making things up, and imaginary friends kind of thing. And they were getting frustrated with me while they were trying to get their work done and pick the flowers. So, my mom or somebody said, "Well, just go play by the barn. That's what, you keep looking at the barn, just go over there." So I went over there, and as I was walking, the man went into the barn. And so I followed him. I went into the barn, and there was nothing there. It was just an empty barn. It was just hay on the floor, nothing. There was no equipment or anything. It was just a big empty building, and so there wouldn't have been anywhere for anyone to hide. And so I went back out. There was a little bench right there, and I sat on the bench. And then the gentleman came back out, and he kind of leaned up against the barn for a minute, and I was trying to talk to him. Then he sat down next to me. And the whole time I was talking to him, he acknowledged that I was there, but he never spoke. Not once. He was just focusing on the sisters, on my aunt's sisters that were picking the flowers. Never talked to me at all. But he smiled at me. He looked at me like, he knew I was talking, and I was talking a lot, as 5-year-olds will. And then when they were done picking flowers, it was time to go in the house, and I followed them in the house, and they were telling me, that I was naughty for making up stories. And then when I went to the living room, those old-time portraits that are oval, kind of rounded glass, there was this guy, and he was in a military uniform. I'm guessing maybe from the time period, and this took place in the 70s, so probably World War II, that kind of a uniform. And I was like, look, you guys told me I was making up stuff, but this is the guy I was talking to. This is the guy in the barn. And all heck broke loose. They started screaming at me, telling me I was the child of the devil, screaming at my mom to get me out of the house. It was so chaotic, and I couldn't understand what the fuss was about, because I was excited that they were telling me I was lying, but here's this man. And, my mom dragged me to the car and was whooping my butt all the way there, and come to find out that guy had died in action. That was their brother that was killed in action in whatever the war was at that time. So, my family, both sides were very devout Catholics, especially my mother's side. So anything having to do with paranormal, it was considered like demonic, or, it wasn't you just didn't talk about it. So that was my very first vivid memory that I still hold to this day. And, just, I got a ton of other experiences as well. What about you? What was your first? Because I know you've had a few.
Yeah, one, I drowned. So I had like a near-death experience. That's like my first thing I really remember. The odd thing is I forgot about it. I didn't remember it at all until I was like in my 30s, and my mom reminded me about what happened, and it all came back as a big flash. And we were living in Arizona, and I fell into the pool. The next thing I remember is like rising up, looking down at the pool, down at my body, and then seeing my uncle run and with his robe on and his slippers and just jump right in and get me out. And then next thing I know, I'm awake on the side of the pool. So and it's weird that I didn't remember it until I was an adult. I don't know if maybe I just kind of locked it away. And then I also had the little like gnomes and elves or whatever. I don't know what they were. They were just like little creatures that would poke around corners, and I'd see them in my peripheral vision, and I would hear things walking up the stairs at my grandparents' house because we lived with them after my parents divorced, and I was always just told it's your imagination, and it's just like, no, it's not my imagination. And then and in that house I had like books on the bookshelf fly out. I guess maybe they just were about to fall or something, but they kind of flew right out. And then one time I was laying on my stomach talking on the phone on the bed, and all of a sudden I felt something run across the back of my legs. We had no indoor pets. We couldn't have dogs or cats in the house. And I know there weren't mice or squirrel or anything like that in the house. I mean, I would have seen them because I looked right back as I felt that. And so just little things like that happened.
Yeah, that's interesting. I've experienced quite a bit, but I've never experienced, the little creatures.
Yeah.
So it's probably a good thing. I don't know. I think I might get a little spooked by that out of everything that I've, seen and witnessed.
And I think that's why I shut down that part of me, because I was told, this is, it's your imagination. And it goes back to, I had a very Catholic upbringing, and they felt anything that if it wasn't Jesus or an angel, it was demonic. And
right.
Today I even watched another podcast, and they had these paranormal. He's normally a Bigfoot podcast, but he had these paranormal people on there, and they're saying that everything's demonic. You play with the Ouija board, it's demonic. If you are someone who just knows things, you're demonic, you're possessed. Now there's times where I've just known things about people, like somebody will come in and I'll just know something about them, and they don't even I've never even met them, and I'll know something. So that makes me demonic, that makes me possessed.
Right.
I don't think so. I don't know.
Yeah, I had the same, you and we've talked about this, we had the same upbringing with the Catholic, and it was difficult for me because I spent my entire childhood up till I was probably 17 years old just believing I was going to go to hell for everything, whether it was seeing spirits or chewing bubble gum out of turn. It was a crazy way to grow up. Now it's a lot more lax than it used to be, but yeah. I get that too in a lot of these television shows out there. Everything's just evil and demonic, and that's not the way it is. I mean, I do believe there are some evil entities out there, but it's anything for ratings, I guess.
The whole vibration thing, like higher vibration, lower vibration, and I think it's more like that, where if something is a not good entity, it's a lower vibration. And so I don't think it's necessarily evil. I mean, you hear things of like exorcists and stuff like that, and exorcisms, and so I do believe that there is evil, and that there is the devil, and there is God, but I don't think everybody is just evil because they experience things.
Right.
Just like they said that if you're a witch, you're evil. I don't think that's true either. There's good witches.
Right.
There's people, because the core of Wicca and witchcraft and all that is your intention. If you have a good intention, if you believe in something in a good way, if you were to do a spell, if you have a good intention for it, then it's not evil. If you have evil intentions, that's when someone is evil. And I just don't think that everybody that practices Wicca is evil.
Right. Yeah, I totally agree with that.
Yeah,
Yeah, it's a label, and I think it's because people that don't understand it or haven't had experiences like we have, it's a label.
Mm-hmm.
They don't understand it, so they just automatically want to say it's something of the devil, it just doesn't make sense.
Yeah.
Because I'm like you, I shut it off for a long time. I didn't talk about it for a long time. And I wish I wouldn't have, because even though I'm open to it now, I feel like I kind of shut it off too much.
Mm-hmm.
And it's, people say, like you said in the beginning, it's kind of a gift. But then again, it's kind of a curse, because there is no rhyme or reason, like especially with spirits. They just come to you whenever, it doesn't matter. I've been vacuuming in the middle of the day and had them walk right in front of me. It's not, where everybody has a misconception that it's got to be 3 o'clock in the morning and pitch black. That's, it's not true. And so that's, it wouldn't be evil just because you have a spirit walking around. And yeah, I'm open now. I've been more open in recent years because I do have acquaintances, people that have passed on of friends or family, and they do come to me with messages. It's not like you said, it's not Teresa Caputo. I'm no medium, and by any means, I'm not gifted like that. But I'm more open now because, if I have somebody that's passed that wants to give you a message through me, I embrace it. And I will get a hold of that person and say, hey, you might think this is crazy, but so-and-so came to me and I'm letting you know what they said. And I've never had anybody that was negative about it. I've never had anybody say that I was crazy or they didn't believe me or... So I wish I would have embraced it more when I was younger, because I feel like I could have helped a lot of people. But I'm doing it now, so I guess that's the important thing.
Yeah, and I think being young and like having your experience where you were yelled at for it, and mine where I was told it was my imagination, I think that brings in fear. And then because of the fear, you don't want to be afraid. You want to be a big girl and you don't want to be afraid, so you shut it off. And I think that's what I did. I shut it off at a young age, and it's hard if you shut it off at a young age to get it back as you get older. So I think I'd be a lot more open and a lot further along if I would have been raised by people who weren't so afraid of it. And I think the fear goes back to, if you're afraid of it, I think that's what like lower vibrational entities, evil, they feed off the fear, because fear is gives them power. So if you're not afraid, then they're not going to have power. And they're not going to have power over you if you're not afraid.
That's true.
I believe that God intended all of us to have abilities and wants us to understand everything. But because of our fear, we block that out. And all this stuff.
I completely agree with that. Yeah, I think if more people were open or more, letting your kids, I don't know about if encourage or embrace is the right word, but just don't shun them, don't make them feel bad for that. Because I think this world, and you go back to ancient times before all of this religion took over, there are so many stories that are out there, and you look at petroglyphs and cave drawings and all of that, and they were in tune with all of that. They weren't shunned or made to feel bad about it. They it was just part of their life. And I wish that it was more that way now. I think a lot of more people would embrace death or loss on a more positive note.
Yeah, I know when my parents died, it was sad because I was missing them. I didn't want to lose them out of my life. But at the same time, they were both suffering at that time, so I really feel that it was better for them because my mom suffered for 20 some years because she had a stroke at 47 and died at 72. So she 74, something like that. And so she suffered for a long time. So for her, I think death was finally end of all that suffering. And not necessarily a bad thing because she'll be able to go on to another life. I truly believe in reincarnation. I do too. Yeah. I wonder about things like animals, like if you're really good, do you get to be reincarnated as a spoiled cat like mine? Or spoiled dog like yours? So how does that work? But that stuff we'll know when it's our time. That's why
I've always wanted to go under hypnosis to bring out my past lives. I have some memories and some recollections I was kind of born with, but I don't. It's the memory is so faded. The only thing I can really remember is I think I must have been like a Mesoamerica or something, or Aztec or something, because when I was a child I used to call chocolate milk mojito. And it just, in the way I said it, it was like an accident. I just always called it mojito. Well, I am fascinated by ancient cultures, archaeology, all of that. And I remember reading, and I can't remember what it was now, if it was, I don't think it was Aztec, but something like that. And I was reading like some of the language they had, some of the words, and that was a word for cocoa. So mojito, I don't remember it now because I was a teenager when I was doing some research back in the day when you used to go to the library for that instead of to your phone. But yeah, so I totally believe in reincarnation. Do you have any stories or any experiences to share on reincarnation?
Well, like whenever I go to Chicago.
I think we really talked about it, yeah.
Yeah, like, because we went to Chicago together, and whenever I go to Chicago, I feel like I'm home. Like this was my home. And I love Italian food, so I'm thinking maybe I was an Italian in Chicago.
Yeah, you could have been a gangster.
Yeah. So I don't know. So that's probably about the only thing. I guess I have reverence for other cultures because I feel that I was part of other cultures in other lifetimes. So I guess that's why I'm very I strongly I don't want to get into politics, but I strongly want other people want their cultures represented in our society, and
Yeah.
so I guess that's why, because I feel I was part of other cultures. I wasn't always a white woman, in past lives.
Yeah.
So
Yeah, me too. I feel that way because I'm very empathetic to begin with. I'm an empath, but there are certain times when I see, like, I watch a lot of like Discovery History type of shows, and when I was younger, I used to just read a ton, and there are certain things that just trigger me. Like, I feel it deep down in my soul. Things that get me upset, things that make me just cry out of the blue. For years, I was always very sympathetic with what the Jewish went through. Just the atrocities. I'm not gonna get into that, but I would cry and I'd be so upset. And then I'm adopted, so 5 years ago I took the DNA test, and I was told I was French and Irish growing up, but I'm actually part Jewish. And so I don't know if it's just part of my inner being, or if I think that I probably went through that at one point in time.
Well, they say your DNA,
You know, being Jewish or something, yeah.
Your DNA has past trauma in it. So if your grandparents and then parents had trauma, then it passes it down in your DNA, which is crazy to think. How would your DNA remember that? But they've done studies with crows, and they had a person wearing a mask do something horrible to a crow, and those crows that were around there, their grandchildren crows, whenever they'd see that person with a mask, they would like immediately start, caw, caw, and stuff like that. So it's fascinating to think that you don't have to experience something just to still have the residual emotions from it. And
that's interesting.
Yeah.
Yeah, that might explain it, because I thought maybe it might have been a past life or something, but I'm like you, there are certain things that I'm just drawn to or just affect me. I feel like places that I might have been there, so I would love to just do a past life regression, just to see for my own,
Yeah.
And I know your spirit goes on, because there's a lot of, I watch a lot of documentaries and children that talk about, well, do you remember when I died, and you, and mommy, you were actually my daddy, or you were my child, or, so I believe that. I feel that with my own sons. I feel like that our spirits have been intertwined, because like I feel, I'm not going to name names because they're sitting here with me, but I feel like I was probably one of those children at one time, or something. I do believe that.
Yeah. I just always hope I hope my mom and I get to spend time together in our next lives, and I would love it if she could be my mom again. I just not have a stroke, and we could have fun and enjoy each other's company instead of her going through all that suffering.
Yeah.
But
yes, definitely interesting. I do believe in it.
So we've been on a few investigations together, and you can go to the on this channel and see them. The one that most recently was MJ and her family. They had a lot of issues that have been going on for years, because that was our first investigation, and it's the most recent one because we've gone back like 3 times. And I personally, I feel that there's just a lot of emotion going on within the family and the family dynamic, that, and especially because she's got a teenage daughter now. She has well, now it's a 2-3 year relationship. So there's all that part of it. So I really think that that's why they've seen and heard the things that they have. I think it's more on the line of what's called a PK manifestation, where the energy from conflict and emotion and stuff is so high that it just creates an entity onto its own. I'm thinking that's what's happening. What are your thoughts?
I think that's a lot of it. I know this last investigation when we were there, I don't know if I can say her name or not, one of our newest members, a friend of yours,
Yep.
Picked up that that's an area of ley lines. I was trying to find that, but I never had a chance. And I think the previous homeowner, Angie, is still there. And that's interesting about, can I tell the little backstory about that house?
Sure, yeah.
When we decided to do this as a group, we put a shout out on social media that we were starting a group, and this MJ had reached out and told us about the house and everything going on. And I'm going to try to shorten it up. It turns out that the house used to belong to one of my dad's best friends. And it was so interesting to me. It was just, to me, it was almost more than a coincidence.
Right.
Because I used to spend a lot of time in this house. And, my dad and, I'm just going to say Mr. W. My dad and Mr. W. Used to, they were always tinkering, adding on to the house, building this, building that, and a lot of times I'd be out with them or I'd be inside with Mrs. W. And she would make cookies and just a lot of time in this house. So it was really amazing to me that it happened to be the same house. And MJ is not in any way related to them. She did not know them. The only reason she knew the names is because she was getting mail for them. But that was... To me, it was interesting because in this last investigation too, which you can go to our channel and see, our one member, can I say her name or?
Yeah.
Sylvia. Yeah. So, she was not there the first time, but she was there this last time, and. There were a couple times her and I were alone in the house, and she said, we were in the back hallway, and she said she could feel, now she is very gifted, by the way, she could feel the house reaching out and touching me. Like the walls and everything were kept trying to touch me. And she said that the environment of the house itself was very chaotic, like you said, due to the family dynamics. But she said that the house itself found me very comforting. And I just thought that was so amazing because I hadn't been in that house in many, many years. And to know that, it just shows residual energy and how, a house, you wouldn't think much of it, but that the house is basically alive, kind of, that's probably not the right wording. But it was just so amazing. And just such a weird coincidence. Mm-hmm. But you're right, though. I do believe that Mrs. W is still in the house because she was never mean to me, but I guess she had a little bit of a reputation. But I do believe what you said is right. I do believe that there's just so much chaos going on, and that word kept coming up too, chaos. Mm-hmm. I think that a lot of it is just manifested in one way or the other.
Yeah, I don't think it's intentionally manifested.
No.
It's just a product of the chaos that's going on, and anybody can have that. And yeah, and then as far as MJ, she was just random. So it wasn't like she knew you were there or you had been there. We didn't know her before that. We just put that social media up and she's the one who responded. I mean, to me, that's more than a coincidence that you had spent time in that house.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's... And then
Yeah, it was interesting being there.
And that's one thing that I've often wondered about, because Amy Allen, she was from the Dead Files, and she has Crohn's, like both of us, and she had to quit because of her health. And the last time we were there, after that, you got really sick.
I did.
So
Extremely.
Yeah, I mean, you spent time in the hospital and all that. So it just makes you wonder, is there some correlation?
Yeah, there could be, because I know there's been places I've gone to where I felt like something was trying to feed off me, and I do everything I can to avoid it. And I've had this Crohn's for years and underlying issues, but it seemed to me that it did. I can't say that that's what made me so sick this time, but I was sick last time too. We went to investigate, and then I lost my dad, and then I ended up, I don't want to talk too much about my health, but I ended up in the hospital. I had emergency surgery. It was really bad. I did die. And then again, when we went this last fall, I had gotten so sick again. And when Sylvia and I were standing in the driveway, I don't know if you were out there. I think we were all just kind of, we had all just got there, and she thought it was MJ's husband, but she was actually picking up on me. She was like, "Oh my God, I feel all these horrible things in your stomach," and she was describing in detail about all these horrid things that she was feeding off, and she was telling him he needed to be checked. And I said, "Actually, you are speaking about me." And she was like, "Oh yeah," she had to get away from me because the feeling was so strong. But I do think, because of everything that was going on in that house, I can't say yay or nay, but I thought about that myself.
Yeah.
And after that first investigation
with us.
Yeah, I know, but like most of us got sick in some kind of way. Our videographer, I'm not going to use his name at this time, he ended up having an illness that he was treated for. I don't want to get into it for privacy. And then another member and their child ended up getting sick again too. So we, most of us all had issues that went on that investigation the first time.
Yeah.
And me with this last time.
If we ever do go back there, you're not going with us.
That's fine with me.
Video call or something.
Because we did the blessings, we did the cleansings, but I think it just fed off me. Like maybe the bad energy wanted to do away with me because the house, the good energy was welcoming me. I don't know.
Yeah.
It was strange. It was definitely a strange experience.
Definitely. Yeah. So do you have anything else you want to discuss, or?
Well, I just to remind everybody that you're starting this because you want to talk about not just spirits, but anything paranormal, cryptids, aliens, anything like that. So people will have to make sure to tune in, and because we can share stories and more podcasts to come. You know, I've seen strange things. I've never shook hands with an alien, but I've seen some UFOs in the sky. Had a little bit of experiences with Bigfoot as well. I know a lot of people that have. So, and as far as spirits, I could talk all day.
Have you seen Bigfoot or?
I have not seen him. Well, there were a couple times I thought I saw something when I was up north mushroom picking. And I did live up north and in a very secluded part. I don't want to give away the county because everyone will be driving there. But
there's only gonna be like 2 people watching this.
There was, yeah, I know. But it was crazy because I had heard a lot of stories, and a lot of the locals talk about it. And Same thing. There's a lot of mushrooming and foraging up there. So, we were out mushroom picking, and there was this big black creature, a lot of swamps in that area. And I found this little waterfall one time just mushroom picking, and there were tracks around in the mud. And they weren't bear tracks, because bears sometimes they'll walk in a line, so it'll look like a Bigfoot, but it's not. But one time in my house, I did. There was a lot of sightings on the road that I lived off of. It was an old dirt road. One night I had the windows open. It was summertime, and this stench came in the window. It was so strong, like just swamp water. My dog, I've never seen my dog. She wasn't a barker, and she was just whining and acting very strange. Like I've never, up until then or after, have ever seen her act like this. So I was spooked. I didn't know what it was, and so my first thought, I had the sliding door open and the screen open, middle of the woods. I'm not worried about anybody coming in except for maybe bear. Well, I wanted to protect my dog, so I ran through the house. I closed the screen door. I closed all the windows, and did not sleep for the rest of the night. Well, in the morning, the house, there's a lot of black dirt, a lot of like black sand type in this area. So I do have some pictures I took on my phone. There were big footprints, like human prints, only they were extremely large. And maybe next time, maybe when we're talking about Bigfoot, I'll hold my phone up and show the picture, or we can put it in the comments. So these prints went along the side of the house, and they were huge, and I measured about 7 feet apart.
Wow.
So and it went from like across the dirt road, around my garage, and through my backyard into the woods to where I couldn't track it anymore. And so I got a couple good pictures of a couple prints, and then the rest were just kind of in the sand. But and I was living with a boyfriend at the time, and he had all these same things, and he told me that he had saw things. He worked out. Part of his job up there was what do they call it? Grooming the trails, or grading where they go through with equipment and clear the ORV trails and like that. And he saw a lot of things. He sent me pictures of hybrid wolves and wolf tracks. A lot of stuff going on up there. Yeah.
I know. When I first got into Bigfoot, I thought, I'm going to have to go to Minnesota because I've heard there's some there, or I'm going to have to go to Oregon or Washington. No, I've been hearing more and more.
Right here in Michigan.
Yeah. I even heard it's like as close to us as Beaverton. There's like a Beaverton swamp thing. I heard people talking about that. So yeah, it's crazy. It's, and I think they could even be, well, Sylvia said she actually saw Bigfoot because of the portals. Like, it was there she lives by Shattuck and Bay. It's one of the busiest areas in the city, but it showed itself to her, and then it closed all the tree branches and disappeared. So it's just like, I think she's more in tune to that stuff.
Oh, she definitely is.
But yeah. Well, yeah, and like you said, we want to get more people on here. We're willing to do more investigations. And you can tell us about anything you want when it comes to something paranormal. And my definition of paranormal is anything out of the norm. So just feel free. You can email me at theskepticalbelievers989 theskepticalbelievers989@gmail.com, or you can message me on Baggin on Facebook. And I'll also show a picture of the thing for bagging so you know what you're looking for. But yes, please, we want to have more guests on here. I am going to get Sylvia on here and hopefully Jenny and Mariah. But they're going through some issues right now. So hopefully soon we can get more people and we might do a part 2 with you. Thanks a lot.
And even if somebody wants to share a story and remain anonymous, we can make that happen too.
Definitely. We could do it if you don't want to do it this way where people see you. We could do it just your voice, or you can just tell me your story and I can read it on here when we do something. So, yeah. So, well, thank you for watching. We appreciate it. And tune in for more podcasts. We're hoping to make this a regular thing. So thanks, and please like and subscribe.